This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings, powered by eXp Realty. Online at madeformoreliving.com.
So on the previous segment, we had Misha, and Misha was talking about how he joined the team, how he became successful, how he's now a successful solo agent, and we were talking about why homes don't sell, like what sellers should do in order to net the most amount of money from the sale of their home. And that dovetails nicely into this next conversation that I recently saw. Actually, Valerie shared this with me last night. She's like, hey, look, Ryan was on the show, Ryan Lundquist, the appraiser, and he recently made a post, and he's like, things for sellers to recognize about buyers. So if you are selling your home, if you're wanting to sell a home now or in the near future, you have to put yourself in the shoe of the buyer and think, hey, if I was a buyer looking at my home, what are they feeling? What are they thinking? What are the buyers in today's market experiencing? And so he has a number of things here. One, buyers are patient. They're getting picky about getting into contract and staying into contract. So if there's some surprises, once they're in contract, you didn't do those inspections up front, they might back out. Many of them lack urgency because, again, they're picky. They're like, hey, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to wait. This house has been on the market now a little bit longer than what we were used to in the past. I'm just going to wait. Let's see if they do a price adjustment. They are willing to pay. Here's the good news, though. Buyers are willing to pay top dollar for a home that checks all the boxes. So if it's move-in ready, if it's clean, if it has the updates, if it's been well maintained, if it's in a great location, they're willing to pay top dollar. Now, just because your neighbor down the street sold for top dollar, though, that doesn't mean you're entitled to that. So you have to put yourself in the buyer. Is your house comparable? If they were going to pick between your house and their house and they were priced the same, who would they choose and why? And so, and the reality is, too, some buyers really need help with closing costs. The interest rates are too high. For affordability is definitely still an issue. And so are you going to help them buy down their rate? Are you going to help contribute towards closing costs? Are you going to credit them some money so they can do the repairs after the close of escrow? And buyers, the last thing that he talked about in his post, again, fantastic guy, Sacramento appraisal blog, Ryan Lundquist, he said, buyers want to feel like the negotiations are good for them also. So they're sitting back. They're not necessarily in the driver's seat, but you have to be willing to work with the buyers in order to get these deals across the closing line, across the finish line. So that's what if you're thinking about selling a home, put yourself in the shoes of today's buyers. This isn't 2021's buyers where they're gonna give up their firstborn and come in $80,000 over list. You have to put yourself in the shoes of today's buyers.
Well, what about all cash buyers from the Bay Area?
Definitely still happening, but it's not as big of a deal as it was back then. I will say cash tends to be more of a luxury price point. So it's crazy that $1 million isn't even like necessarily luxury anymore. But once you start getting up $1.5 million, $2 million, you are starting to see more of those cash purchases. Roughly, ballpark numbers I've heard in the past is about 15%. On average, are people migrating from the Bay and purchasing here in the Sacramento region. So, 15 out of 100 homes are Bay Area buyers. So there's still an important segment of the population. You don't want to discount them or discredit them, but not everybody's a Bay Area buyer.
So your advice, your philosophy is for home sellers to put yourselves in the shoes of those that are out looking for a home, because they've been in that position as well, where they've been looking for a home and wanting to get a great deal. So go back to when you were in that position.
Yep, and you might be in that position. Most people selling a home are then going to also buy a home.
True story.
And so if you're selling the home and you're thinking, my home is this, my home is that, I need this because I need to move into the next property. Well, guess what? That's what your buyer's thinking as well. Your buyer's thinking about the affordability. They're thinking about the maintenance. They're thinking about that monthly payment. Are there ways that you can maybe keep the price high, but still help them with the monthly payment? And so, like through rate buy downs. And so just again, think about your client.
So if someone is looking for a home, would you give them that same advice? Hey, put yourself in the shoes of those that are selling the home?
Absolutely. So does that work? It's a negotiation. It's a negotiation. So there's two parties. As long as both sides feel like they're winning, right, then negotiations, I think, are being successful. There's always going to be, in some degree, a winner or a loser in the situation given on a certain topic. But overall, everybody has to feel like it's fair and equitable in order for these deals to really stay together, because the buyers can back out, and there's more opportunity now in the market. There's more homes on the market, so they can back out and pick something else. because what they're feeling is as they're committing to this process, as they're committing to your home, they're committing to this high monthly payment. Like a lot of people just want a monthly payment of $3,000, which is an insane amount of money considering maybe what their take-home pay is. But that is, that $3,000 is what I'm hearing a lot. $3,000 to $3,500 is now like what they want their mortgage payment to be. And so if they're committing to buying your home and that's stretching that $3,000, that it's stretching their budget, they're that little voice at the back of their mind is like, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right thing for myself, my family? What are the costs going to be once I own this home? Are there repairs that are going to have to be made immediately? And so you want to lower that fear and put yourself in the buyer's shoes. But yes, buyers should also be thinking from the seller's perspective, hey, this is my home. I did a lot of upgrades. I've maintained the property. You're getting it for a good price because in 3 to 5 years it's going to be worth way more money. You should always look at it from the other person's perspective, but at the end of the day, you do have to decide what's right for you. But that's what the realtor's job is. They should be able to sit down and go, what is it you want? Why is it you want this? And then go out and help you find that and achieve that outcome because they understand what it is you're looking for. Mm-hmm. But if you're not having those honest conversations with your real estate agent, how are they supposed to guide you?
Yeah. When you agree that for both sides of the party, it's an emotional purchase, emotion plays a lot into it.
For residential real estate, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's tough because there is that component, but you as their realtor, don't you advise them that, in order for us to be successful, we have to take the emotional element out of it?
There's some emotional, like so if you're like a seller and you really
because
love...
it's like when you have a yard sale and you're selling something that you've had in the family for years and years and years, and you've got this emotional attachment to it, you're trying to sell it for way more than what somebody at a yard sale that's driving by that's willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? That's worth like 50 cents. Grandma, why are you selling it for $25? So... because she's got an emotional attachment to it. It's just like a seller who has an emotional attachment to their home. Yeah. They've invested in it. You don't see all the hours and months of work that they've done to put into the home that they feel is invaluable. Oh my gosh, you realize, like I had a neighbor one time when I moved into my house and I took out some landscaping. He was so upset because the previous homeowner had spent weeks and weeks putting that in. And he was just so, like he walked over, do you realize what Margaret, I don't remember her name was, do you realize how much work and time and money she put in for that bush or landscaping? And I go, I know, I get it. This is my home now.
It was important to her.
Yeah.
So,
but that seems like that's a challenge or a hurdle for
totally
home
an
sellers.
emotional thing. So I have an investor friend, and he was negotiating with this guy. This guy needed to sell the house. He could not afford it. It was going to go back to the bank. He was going to go through foreclosure, but he just couldn't let go of the home. And so he's like, you know what? Let's just go out for dinner. Let's just hang out and let's just chill. And spend some time together. The investor's buying. We're good. And so he's like, all right, let's do it. And so during the course of that meal, it came up that the main thing keeping him in that house was his kids. They had the
measurements.
Yeah, the measurements from when they were growing.
Tall they were growing.
On this door frame. And he didn't want to leave that behind.
Oh.
And that was the main thing. It was totally an emotional attachment. And the investor's like, dude, we can totally help you with that. We'll remove that and we will reinstall it at the correct height in your next place. Like, don't sweat it.
Love that.
And then the property sold. But that was an emotional thing. It wasn't even had very little financial element to it.
Yeah.
And so when working with buyers and sellers, yes, we recognize that there's an emotional component, but you also, like, what's more important to you? Like, it goes back to, like, what are you looking to achieve when you purchase this home or when you sell this home? Are you wanting to net the most amount of money? Then here are the things that we're going to need to do. Are you looking to buy the right home for your family? What does that look like for you? And then we walk through it, because it's the emotions do play a factor, but what we want that North Star, that ultimate goal that we're working towards. So that way we're making progress towards the real reason why we're...
Yeah, because you're trying to avoid other emotions like depression and discouragement because our house isn't selling.
Or I can't find a house.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the stress and anxiety because, oh my gosh, now we're sitting on this property and we need to move, or we're wanting to retire and now we can't retire for another couple of years because...
the house isn't worth what we expected.
Right. Yeah. And what's interesting I will say is just looking at the real estate market from an outsider is how fast things shift. Like it just seems like weeks ago or maybe months ago that it was just a seller's market. Like sellers could sell their house for whatever they wanted. And it's like, boom, like time flies so fast and all of a sudden there's a shift.
Yeah.
And you know, and that could happen again, right? It's just the way the real estate market works.
It will happen again.
It will. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it's been, for us, it feels like it's been slow because I'm in it day in and day out.
Sure.
But in the last, I would say, month, it's that teeter-totter has finally started tipping out of favor for the sellers and into favor for the buyers. Again, I still think it's a seller's market, but it feels more neutral, more like a buyer's market, and we haven't felt that in a long time. But when you're thinking about that, here are 5 mistakes that sellers make and things that we can actually do to help them. And we'll cover that in the next segment.
So listen to this. Kathleen and Phil, they wanted to sell their home in Folsom and retire out of state. So they reached out to, of course, Johnny Jennings and the Tom Daves team with Made for More Realty, who were able to not only sell their home in 6 days, wow, less than a week, but also earn them a record price for that neighborhood. So if you're a homeowner and you expect more, then get more with Johnny Jennings and the Tom Daves team with Made for More Realty, brokered by EXP. There's a reason why they've been voted #1 in Roseville for the past 3 years, why they have more 5-star Google reviews than everyone else. Just Google Made for More Realty today and get more, ladies and gentlemen, for your home. Again, Google Made for More Realty today and get more for your home. License number 581837.